Hello everyone, welcome to GB Bricks. In today's video we're going to be reviewing one of the new releases from LEGO being 40803. This is the Optimus Prime and Optimus Prime Truck Brickheadz. Now I grew up in the 80s and was a big fan of Transformers back in the day. Fantastic cartoon, Generation 1 I'm talking about. I mean, if you wanted to ever teach a child about loss, then just make them watch the Transformers movie. It was absolutely brutal, unbelievable. But yeah, I really was looking forward to these Brickhead releases. Not a big Brickhead fan, in fact these are the first ones I've ever bought, but I did want to see exactly how they'd stack up, if you pardon the pun. So what exactly do I think of this set? Well, let me tell you. So let's start by looking at the build experience then. There are 237 pieces in this particular set. It took me about 45 minutes to build, bearing in mind I was building it whilst looking through the lens of a camera, so it took a little bit longer. And you do get two separate instruction booklets, one obviously for Prime the robot and one for Prime the vehicle. There are 4 bags, 2 for each of the builds, and we'll start by looking at Prime in his robot form. And whilst there is a little bit of repetition in the build itself, obviously you have to build each side of Prime and they are exactly the same, albeit reversed. What I did like about this build is the way that it does break it up. So you'll build one side first, I believe it's his left hand side, the right as I'm looking at it now. Then you move on to the back, you've built the front by this point, and then you go back and do the other side. It just prevents unnecessary repetition. You know, you do have to do both sides, but just breaking it up in such a way does certainly help. Now, I've never built a Brickhead before. I've bought a fair few in my time, but they're always gifts for other people. And I've always heard about the fact that there's a brain inside as you build up the model. That is the case here, although it's clearly more of a mechanical brain. It uses the transparent or translucent pink bricks as opposed to the opaque ones, which was a clever touch. I wonder how many of the Brickheads have done that in their time. I'm assuming there's been a few exceptions to the usual pink rule. And moving on to the truck then, this is a much quicker build, I would say. This doesn't take as long. This time actually you do build the 2 sides one after the other. I'm not quite sure why they didn't mix it up the second time, but as it's such a quick build, it doesn't really matter. And you do complete it very much as you would expect any vehicle that you've ever built with LEGO, finishing with the wheels and then placing it onto its stand. It does actually drive. You can take it off the stand and wheel it across the table. It will work. But overall, I would say that this was a fun, short build. One of those nice, quick experiences where you look for your backlog, say for example, and just want something to kill half an hour, and end with something that's very aesthetically pleasing, and we'll get to that later. Let's move on to the building techniques now then, and if you've ever built a Brickhead before, I'm sure you'll know what to expect. If you haven't, let me explain. A lot of the build does revolve around using snot bricks, studs not on top, or studs on side techniques in order to build up the base to then add details such as this kind of helmet piece or Prime's headpiece by way of them being able to stick a number of tiles over the top of it. This takes place all throughout, including the body piece as well, and even right late into the build you're still doing it as you add some of the finer detail onto the head of Prime. This part here, even now, is still using some studs on side techniques to add this final curve. And it's nice to see LEGO at work when they do things like this. I mean, this could, technically have been a 2x2 sloped piece. So to see them invent a way to get the shape exactly right is very pleasing. The same applies to the techniques used on the vehicle. Again, lots of studs on side building. I did like how you built these stack pipes here. I thought that was quite clever. I was wondering at one point if they were going to end with this, and thought that would be a shame because it didn't quite look right. But then of course right at the end you had that final bit that does really just add the finishing touch onto what you would expect Prime's vehicle to look like, or any large truck of course. It is a small build as I've already said, so you're not going to get a huge amount of techniques, but it is interesting as a first time Brickheadz builder, but someone that's built LEGO for many years, to see the techniques in the flesh, if you like, or in the brick, for how the Brickheads come together. It's something I'd kind of seen the end result of and seen my daughter building them whilst not really paying a huge amount of attention. But yeah, I did like the build and thought they were quite clever. Let's move on to the general aesthetic now then, and if we just comment on both of them at the same time really, I think both of them do a very good job of portraying Optimus Prime in both of his forms. The Prime robot gives you the impression of exactly who it's meant to be, albeit like a chibi version, I guess, a caricature of that character, obviously with a much larger head, being the point of the Brickheadz, I guess. But I do think it comes together very well to serve its purpose of being a caricature whilst making it instantly obvious who it's meant to be. There are some fantastic details here. I should say that all of these pieces that you're seeing here are prints. There are no stickers in this set at all. And I do feel that the prints used do a fantastic job of conveying exactly what the Generation 1 Transformers figures look like. If I just pick the vehicle up for a minute, I mean, these kind of light streaks across the panes of the windows are almost, I mean, spot on for what I remember of those, you know, Generation 1 cartoons. The touches like these Autobots logos, again, all prints, look amazing. That continues on to the vehicle, onto the truck. You get another couple of prints there, and again, a lovely Autobots logo. One thing I don't like so much about the Robot Prime figure is the mouth. There's something about it that just doesn't quite sit right with me. I think in terms of the actual character, Generation 1 Optimus Prime, it probably is correct to have it downward slanted. But in terms of it as a Lego model, I think this piece isn't quite right, and it almost makes it look like he's got a beak. So what I'm going to do with mine actually is I'm going to take this piece off. I'm going to take the two 1x2 jumper plates off as well, and I'm going to replace them with one of the 2x2 tiles with the two studs on, putting that on so that the studs are at the bottom. And if you don't have one of these pieces and this is something that interests you on your model, then you can use a 1x2 tile and a 1x2 plate as well. Now I'm going to take that piece and I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees, and I'm going to attach it like that. I think actually that looks better. Might not strictly be as accurate, but I do think it suits this particular model better. The next section is minifigures. Now, when there aren't any minifigures in the set, what I do is I look at how LEGO have used the budget, bearing in mind they haven't included a minifigure, to see if they've pushed it or extended it as far as they possibly could. So in this case, I think a lot of that applies to the prints. I mean, you get what, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 major prints there, plus the small eye pieces that aren't exclusive to, you know, to these models, I don't believe, unless in the transparent blue they are. But I do think that is a good use of the budget, bearing in mind obviously there are no minifigures to use some of that budget up. Let's move on to value then, and this set costs £17.99, and some regional equivalents are on your screen now. I believe this is standard pricing for two large Brickhead characters. You get one for £9.99 over here in the UK, one and a kind of a half for £13.49, and then the two larger ones are £17.99. You could argue perhaps that the truck could count as more of a half figure than a full-on figure, but I do feel actually that, bearing in mind the number of prints that are included on this second model here, it is more substantial than the usual half figures you get in some other sets that necessitate that smaller price. The Optimus Prime and the Optimus Prime truck Brickheadz are exactly what I wanted them to be. They're very good chibi style representations of well-loved characters that will sit on the shelf and be instantly recognizable. I think it makes sense to start with Prime and Bumblebee, which is of course the other set you can get at this moment in time, although I do hope that they extend this past just these two characters. They're two fantastic characters. Prime is my favourite, but they are characters that get a lot of attention, and I'd love to see, obviously, Decepticons come at some point, but even moving back to the Autobots, some of the well-loved but lesser utilised characters such as Ratchet and Jazz get some sort of love from LEGO now that we have this fantastic collaboration between LEGO and Hasbro. The Optimus Prime and Optimus Prime truck Brickhead get a GB Bricks score of 84%. So there you have it, another set reviewed. Please do let me know your thoughts. I think these are very good actually, very pleasantly surprised, bearing in mind they're my first ever Brickhead, and I will certainly pick the Bumblebee one up at some point. And I've also recently reviewed another of the new releases, being the Red Bull Speed Champions RB20. If you want to give that a watch, I'll put a card in the top right hand corner. Until next time though, take care and happy building.